Hey guys, it's Diviner from Merch.com with the guide on how to merchant discontinued items, also known as rares. The guides for other popular items can be found in the video description. Now before I get into this video, I appreciate the fact that everyone has their own opinion about trading rares, and there will undoubtedly be people who disagree with me. I'm going to state my opinion from my years of merchanting them, and if you disagree with anything or have any questions, just leave them in the comments. So first off, some general information about these. When I say discontinued items, I mean those that do not come from the Squeal of Fortune. So party hats and a Christmas cracker, Halloween masks and Santas, Easter egg, disco for turning, a pumpkin and half wine. Discontinued items are price checked in the Quark friend chat. It was the first friend chat for price checks in game and it is very well organized. The chat uses the S&B system. If you don't already know how this works, then please pause the video and read about it here. Additionally, the price ranges for the items above max cash are determined through this method. Again, please pause the video if you want to read about it. I personally find it a very fair and transparent system. Keep in mind that, like most other price checking friend chats, our Quark tolerates no off-topic talk and no talking about anything related to price trends. This means that literally all that goes on in there is people reporting a buy or a sale, people requesting the latest price, and people giving the latest prices, as well as conflicting fake offers, fake buys or sales. Everything else is pretty much off topic. If you'd like to talk about merchanting related things, especially rares, then the clan chat Clan Quark might be a good place to stop by, as off topic talk is fine there. I've spent a fair bit of time in there myself. Don't always take everything serious that people tell you, but it's a nice place for a discussion every now and then. In other markets, it's usually extremely obvious and straightforward why an item rises or crashes. In discontinued items market, on the other hand, it's usually harder to figure this out. I'd like to try to give you some insights about this in the next part of the video. The single most important thing to remember about discontinued items is the fact that they are sentiment driven. As you know, their only real use in game is their cosmetical aspect, which is a status of wealth. This means that any supply and demand is almost completely based on the decisions of merchants. Now, unlike other markets where you can take advantage of the fact that people who play the game need your items to use them. So the decisions of these merchants are based on sentiment, and this means that they make decisions based on their feeling and opinion about the market. Additionally, they will often try to think through the minds of other merchants as well, to predict what they would do and how they feel about the market. In the armor and weapons market, merchants often make decisions based on how many players are going to need their item. There is a different way of thinking behind it, which is very important to understand. Not understanding the sentiment is often where merchants who are new to rares make mistakes, and in the long run, these are the people who the more skilled merchants make money from. These merchants who are new to rares come from different markets where the influence of sentiment is smaller because the supply and demand are much more based on how players behave in the game. They usually haven't even thought about sentiment playing a role, and thus they dive straight in and start flipping or something. As a result, they often burn their fingers after a while. Now, what determines the sentiment is very broad, which makes merchanting discontinued items quite complex in theory. This is also why I'm explaining you this rather than only telling you what margins to expect and what style of merchanting is best. There is simply more to it, and I'd like to help you prepare for that. Now, think about all the things that influence people's opinion about the discontinued items market. Game updates, price trends, decisions made by wealthy merchants, rumors, what the items did in the past. That's a big one. How the other markets are doing, and the list goes on. Let's take game updates for example. You might be thinking discontinued items are never needed for these, which is true other than the keepsakies update. But imagine reading behind the scenes for the upcoming month and being among the unfortunate who have no clue what is coming up. You see nothing but fixes, a high-level farming update, low-level quests, and a new distraction in the version. There aren't really going to be any reasons for people to sell their rares in this case, which other merchants realize as well. In fact, there may be no other interesting update investments at all. These are all reasons to make discontinued items more popular and a lot safer. If, on the other hand, the month is packed with updates where people need their cash for other things like supplies or weapons, people will be more likely to sell their discontinued items, not necessarily because they need the cash, but often because they're afraid others will dump. You have to keep a close eye on all game updates and carefully evaluate how rares will react to them. It's not just game updates, but also how much gold is entering or leaving the game in general. People love looking at this for long-term trends. Keeping an eye on all of these things can occasionally make or save you a lot of money. Another thing too many merchants do wrong with discontinued items is focusing too much on what they did in the past. The perfect example for this is the Santa hat. People always talk how it supposedly rises around Christmas, but this year it peaked in September. In 2012 it peaked in November, and in 2011 in October. It's pretty much a self-fulfilling prophecy which constantly happens at a different time because people want to buy in early. Now, what items did in the past definitely plays a role, you will find no argument there, but it's not the only factor at play. The game economy changes and evolves, so only looking at what happened in the past is far too mathematical and you're completely ignoring the other important factors. Let's look at 2014 for example. You might think at this point in the video, Santas rise really hard at some point after the summer, so I'm going to buy them early and make a profit for sure. It's really naive to take that as your only argument in my eyes. What if a lot of combat related updates like bosses come out in August, September or October? Your investment probably won't work out anymore in that case. So the message here is to broaden your view and to really take the different influences into account. That's it for the whole market story. I hope I cleared some stuff up for you here and gave you some more insights. Now let's look into the different styles of merchanting for discontinued items in general. I'm going to start with long-term investments for all of the discontinued items. In the past I would have told you that this is a good idea because Jagex very rarely interfered with the game economy. We also kept getting more and more gold in the game because of bots and a lack of money sinks, causing some pretty cute inflation, which you can see on the green Partyhat graph here for example. This made the market predictable and you didn't have to worry about Jagex messing things up. Nowadays, however, they are much more concerned about the market. They're constantly looking into adding money sinks through various ways, which devalue discontinued items and redistribute wealth from the rich to the poor. This makes long-term investments a lot riskier, especially when you plan to be completely gone for weeks or even months. So I advise against any long-term positions in rares now that Jagex is actively looking into adding money sinks. There are better and safer ways to make more profit out there. Discontinued items tend to be fairly stable throughout the day while following some long-term trends. The interesting part about them is their occasional very rapid rises and crashes. The problem is that you do have to be online for these occasional panic moments. If you're not, then you will miss out on a majority of the profit that can be made from these items, I'm sorry. If you do have time to sit in the chat for hours a day, you'll be fine. But if you don't, then you'll need to do short-term investments and inactive flips for these. This is where the main use for the merge live graphs comes up. They have historical data going back to July 13th, 2012 on them. A fun little exercise for you here, try to pick a random month of live prices and compare it to all the updates that happened that month. Perhaps you'll learn a thing or two. Anyways, with the live graphs you can easily spot nice opportunities for short-term investments and inactive flips. As always, do make sure you understand why an item has dropped in price before buying in. If you don't know why it crashed, it might not be done with a crash at all. You'll notice that inactive flips on all discontinued items can be very decent if you're skilled enough. These are of course a lot more risky, so it'll take a lot of practice to improve in this field and you might fail quite a few times, but that's just something you have to take with it. Because of the stability rares have most of the time, active flips are usually quite slow with a rather low profit percentage. However, if you're online at a panic moment, active flips can be extremely profitable, but of course also very difficult to do. A panic rise or crash only goes on for as long as people have faith in it. The slightest change can suddenly reverse everything and it'll take experience to notice this. If you have any experience with rares, you'll know this one for sure. During a rise you suddenly see the next hype price being lower than the previous one and you cannot instant sell for a bit lower than that either. By this time you're often already late. It's probably going to crash right back down at this point, but definitely not always of course. A word of advice for times to buy or sell from me are usually the quiet moments during a panic. When the FC suddenly goes really quiet while the prices change a lot, you know that everyone is pulling and putting in their offers like crazy to get the buys or sales they need. I can't really give any more specific strategies here. You must build up your experience over time and learn to read not just the prices but the players, the market and the game. Finally, I'd like to talk to you about the specifics for the different items and methods. I'll do it in the order we have them here on merch. At the time of making this video, the purple, yellow, green and red Partyhats are buyable in the Grand Exchange. White Partyhat is kind of hovering around max cash and the blue and the cracker are above max in the Grand Exchange basically. I'll make a video about street trading and also about sniping items over max cash in the Grand Exchange in the future, and I'll add them to the description. As for the Partyhats in the Grand Exchange, I explained all the merchanting types regarding these before, but I haven't brought up margins yet. I'm not one to make up the margins for you, but in my eyes, any active flip on a Partyhat below 10 mil is not really worth it. I added some simple math for you in the background here to explain why. If you'd like to read it, feel free to pause the video here. Now, when people merchant Partyhats, they often look at what hats above max cash are doing. Partyhat merchants look at how much faith the billionaires have in the most expensive items in the game. If someone with 100 bill, for example, is selling their blue Partyhats, it's considered as kind of a sign of weakness in the market, and others might follow with their sales. The same thing goes the other way around, of course, when they're buying. Now, if, for example, the Grand Exchange Partyhats crash, but the street Partyhats don't, then you'll get either of the two markets to correct itself at some point, as the margins between them tend to remain the same percentage-wise. You have to keep in mind that street trades are often, of course, slower, so the street prices will often lag behind. The margins remaining percentage-wise is an important thing, by the way. Partyhats almost always move in the same direction, and because people firmly believe in the strict difference between them, they are maintained like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you overlay the graphs of the different hats, you'll notice these differences, and they are good things to look out for. Keep an eye out for one hat rising or dropping more than the others. There's always some money to be made there. Anyways, for inactive flips and short-term investments, you really want to aim anywhere between 10 and I'd say 50 mil profit, depending on the volatility of the market, of course. If you can get more like that, good job. It's great, but it just won't happen very often. Of course, there have been countless cases where it was possible, but that's definitely not always going to happen. Anyways, next up are the Halloween masks. These are more common than most people think, and just like the Partyhats, people expect them to move about the same amount percentage-wise. These don't peak as extreme as Partyhats do, so inactive flips and investments are easier on them. Margins usually range from about 500k to 3 mil. I personally wouldn't bother for anything under 1.5 mil. There are better margins out there than that. The Santa hat is by far the most common rares. This often makes them rather lame for inactive flipping, and they are usually more suited for inactive flips and short-term and long-term investments. If you can easily flip a Driger for like 1 mil, it makes no sense to flip a Santa hat for 500k when those are worth twice as much. The Black Santa hat is the newest rare at this point of making the video, and so far only about half the estimated stock is in game. At this point, it's difficult to make any predictions about what type of merchanting will be good for them or what kind of price they will stabilize at. I'd say it's pretty safe to say that inactive flips and short-term investments will be good for them, as this goes for the majority of the expensive items in game, but I can't really say anything about active flipping them at this point. It will also likely be the case that Santa and Black Santa will move in the same direction percentage-wise, just like Partyhats, Halloweens, and Drygors do. It's just a matter of finding the right ratio between the two, which will be something people figure out over time. Then we move on to the non-wearable rares. The Easter egg, pumpkin, and the disc all have the same problem going on. People frequently try to hoard them to make them rise a lot, but because they are not wearable, they simply don't have the same demand which the wearable rares do, which just doesn't make this work out very well. At the same time, most merchants are aware of these hoarders, which puts them off from buying in. Active flips are often far too slow on these, and investments may take a long time as well. It's easy to make them rise in price by instant buying a bunch. Anyone who has a lot of money can do that, but it's much harder to sell them off at a higher price, which goes for so many items anyways. Always remember this. Now, you can really tell from the live graphs how little volatility there is compared to the wearable rares. The best way to go about these are inactive flips again, and on a rare occasion a short-term investment. Then finally, the half-full wine jug. You can get some decent inactive flips on them if not too many people are involved, and if you have the wealth for it, of course. A short-term investment can also be a good thing to do, like on a bunch of them. It can work out well as their volume is much lower and the margins are a lot bigger, but again, you have to be careful that someone else isn't doing the same and is going to dump right on you. That's it for this guide about merchanting discontinued items. Feel free to make your own merchanting log on merch.com to show us your skill and your progress with merchanting. As always, if you have any questions, please ask them below in the comments and I'll respond to you as soon as possible. I hope you enjoyed this guide and good luck with your merchanting.